Marco, thanks so much for the introduction and wonderful afternoon to everybody. My name is Steffen Pauls and I'm the founder and CEO of Moonfare. Before I start, let me ask you, how many people, and I'm glad that Partners Group was before me on stage, how many people know what private equity is, have a real understanding? Okay, who can tell me if you had played for the past 15 years with the top quartile, the best 25% of the managers, if you had invested with them over the past 15 years, what would be your average return? 11%? Other views? Over 20. Over 20%. On average, if you take a KKR since inception, 23%. Very similar, Blackstone, Permira, and others. So who knows Moonfare? Wow. What should I talk about then? So let me start very quickly on private equity, and I want to start with a story, not about me, but about how I came up with Moonfare. I spent quite some time with KKR. KKR is a very large private equity company, invested, for instance, in ProSiebenSat.1 or companies like Boots in the UK or ATU and many others. And what is expected from every senior executive at KKR is that you put your money where your mouth is, which means you have to invest into the KKR funds. And I did so since the very beginning. I joined KKR in 2004. And every year when I got my bonus, basically the company asked back for the bonus and I had to put it back into their own funds. I hated it in the beginning because like someone stealing your Christmas present. But I did so. And when I left KKR in 2015, I was basically taking the balance and was figuring out what was my personal return. And indeed, it was 23%. So I said to myself, wow, pretty cool. And I went to Johannes Huth. He is running or used to run Europe at that point in time. Great friend, great partner, and asked him, hey, Johannes, can I put another 100,000 euros or so into the next KKR fund? And you know what he answered? He said, no. Minimum is 10 million. I said, maybe you're joking, Johannes. You know, I just bought a house in Munich. I have 4 children. 10 million, absolutely not my pocket size. But he said 10 million for everybody who is not with a firm. You're like an institutional investor. And that's the problem about private equity. Private equity is a wonderful asset class. The issue is it's not open. It's very, very difficult to access. Institutional investors play it. Large family offices play it. But for private individuals, it was close to being impossible to invest into the best private equity funds because of the high minimums, A. Second point is there are more than 4,000 private equity funds out there. Who on earth can know or can figure out by herself or by himself which one is really the best one to invest? So it's an access and selection problem. Because you have, if you play private equity, you cannot buy an ETF. You have to be with the best funds out there. The KKRs, Blackstones, Kostlers, Insights, Founders Fund, and you name it. And the third point was lack of liquidity. So when I left KKR, I said there must be more people but me that would love to invest into the best private equity funds with far lower minimums. And this is basically the idea behind Moonfare. Oops, other way around. So Moonfare is exactly solving what I was describing. It's a digital platform. And what we do is basically, if you can't do it on your own, I was not able to bring up the 10 million, let's pool it. Let's bring together a community of like-minded investors. And this is what we are doing over a digital platform. And then we are offering a curated set of funds. We are looking at some 400 funds in a given year. And some 20 make it to the platform. Rigorous, super rigorous selection process done by people who have worked in private equity, so by industry insiders. Fast forward, we have, in the meantime, over 120 copycats. We were the first ones in Europe doing this. And now it sounds so easy, backwards looking. It started, the company became operational in 2018. When we started, or when I started, there was no one else out there. And most of my friends told me, Steffen, why is no one else out there? Why are you doing this? Unproven. Yeah, who on earth will invest 100,000 euros over a digital platform into private equity? So there was so much skepticism out there, and I became quite insecure because 2018-19, we were alone. And then suddenly, end of 19, since then, like mushrooms, we have 150 or so. Every week is a new platform out there. We are by far the largest. We are in 22 countries or so. We are in Asia, we are in Hong Kong, in Singapore, we are in Israel, in India, in the US, London, and so on and so forth. So what we are solving is providing the access. It starts still at a relative high amount of 100K on average. I will talk about it in a sec, and that will change. That's the great news about today. And we do the selection, of course, with a team of 15 professionals from the industry. And then we also have established or built a digital marketplace, secondary marketplace, where people can sell or buy their positions. So de facto, we are providing a path to liquidity. Speeding up a bit, why is private equity so interesting? The opportunity set is large. I talked about the outperformance, and you play with the best players. If you, on the next chart, you see on average, pension funds allocate 26%, that's on the right-hand side. Endowments, even 50% of their total assets to private equity. Private individuals, only 5%. Who's wrong? Probably the private individual. Yeah? And our investors, and that is a survey, you see it, have understood that they want to change this. We did a survey, and here you're seeing the numbers that people want to invest more in the next coming 12 months. Look, so far, the regulation was really, for good reasons, by the way, a hurdle for people to invest. What we have solved is that you can get into private equity not anymore with 10 million. We brought it down to 100K. Why? Because it's a regulated industry. And the term in the EU, and you have heard it, I guess, is professional investor. So you have to be a professional investor, and then there are certain requirements. You have to understand what you're doing, of course. You have to understand private equity. You should have worked in private equity. There are minimum levels still in terms of investment. So that makes it still the service that we have built, a niche service to relatively rich people. Yeah, and our mission, and why, my team, I'm personally, waking up in the morning is not only to make people that are already quite wealthy even more wealthy. Our dream is really to democratize it and to create more prosperity for, call it normal people, ordinary people, not people that have 100K, 10K maybe, 5K, 1K. And this is exactly what is changing. And why is it changing? Because the regulators and also the politicians have understood that excluding 98% of the population from private markets is not sustainable. It's not fair. And this is why a new regime came to play, which is called LTIF, in a new version. The regime has been out there, stands for European Long-Term Investment Fund regulation, and it's basically open up private equity to retail investors. This regime, the LTIF 2.0, will come into play in the starting with the first quarter of next year. It will take time, of course, but it will be, in my view, a huge revolution. And I'm comparing it to what happened in stock markets. Back in the last century, only the Rothschilds could invest in stocks because stocks were very, very expensive in the beginning and not ordinary people. Today, everybody can invest through an ETF and is trading left, right, center. The same is going to happen in private equity through the LTIF regime. And of course, Moonfare has developed a product. It's a very, very carefully curated fund basket. The best private equity players will be in there, selected from a team of industry insiders. We will optimize, of course, for diversification. That is very important because it has to be a diversified product with limited risk. We have liquidity components in there through our secondary marketplace. And very, very important, we are independent. We are not one GP, one manager. They also will launch their LTIFs, which is great, but we are taking an independent view aligned with the investor. Thanks so much for your attention.